Hey, so welcome to our recording here from my U-Learning blog and having a look at the iPhone 3G in this review for educators. Got this angle of ubiquitous learning. At the moment we obviously have a lot of mobile devices, but I can really see that the future comes. We'll be using converged devices that use wireless and cloud computing and all these things much more. That'll be a future where we have ubiquitous computing. And so U-Learning is what learning will need to become in that kind of an environment. The new iPhone 3GS is a perfect example of a device that's moving us in that direction. So as educators we need to keep up on devices like this if we're to provide relevant 21st century learning. This review is really meant to be about the extras that the 3GS provides over and above the standard 3G. Just for any educators out there who are trying to choose between the two. Now there are basically four main features of the 3GS, things it has over the previous models that we'd like to have a look at. Claim that it's the fastest iPhone ever, the video recording that it features, the universal accessibility features, and lastly the compass, and there's also a couple other things that we'll get to as well during the course of the review. So Apple's claim that it's the fastest iPhone ever, that it's up to 2 times faster. We know from different teardowns that have been done that the 3GS has a 50% faster processor than other iPhones. And what kind of effect does this have in practice, in the real world? It has a big effect on loading of web pages, something that we do an awful lot on our iPhones. And there's a lot of tests that show the web page loading is around 2 times faster or better, and that JavaScript performance and loading JavaScripts is up to 3 times faster. You can have a look at sites like Apple Insider or iLounge to find reports on some of those tests that have been done. Obviously there's programs that run a lot faster as well, but I'd like to see how it compared with loading web pages versus the desktop. So I loaded up apple.com. On the 3GS it took 14 seconds. On my Mac it took 7 seconds, so it's took twice as long on the 3GS, but on my previous 3G iPhone it actually took 22 seconds. So a big difference, 22 versus 14. The 3GS was much faster. I want to load up my own web page on the 3GS, and you'll see here it's doing it. It took 40 seconds. On my old 3G it took 51, so it's quite a bit faster on the 3GS. On the Mac it was still 30 seconds, so the 3GS was only 10 seconds off the actual desktop Mac there. Perfectly acceptable times. It also has twice the memory, the 3GS, the RAM we're talking about, for the actual operating system and the programs to access and run off. Got a bit of a shock when I ran free memory for the first time, and on my 3G I was used to seeing maybe 10, 15, 20 megabytes of free memory, where I saw 126.38, and this was after a couple of hours of using different programs, etc. Fantastic having all that extra RAM. Another area where the iPhone 3GS has got doubled is in the storage capacity, the 32 gigabytes of capacity that it has, and obviously that's not quite that much in reality. It comes to 29.33 as the total capacity. So more than enough to bear in mind the thousands of podcasts that you could actually fit on your device, and really it's realistic now to think you can have a year's worth of learning resources all stored on there. Huge advantage for teachers. So let's look at the claim of it being 2 times faster. What the advantages of that are. Obviously there's a lot less time that you as an educator or a teacher have to have with your eyes off the class, looking down, waiting for things to load or to work, etc. And that could be just that you're using it as a remote to control your PowerPoint or your keynote. You don't have to sort of stand around awkwardly waiting for the different pages to render and the controls to go through. Your tasks get done a lot faster. Another big advantage, this is something to do with the extra RAM, is that you don't have to reboot the device now to actually be able to run really intensive apps. the 3G would often run out of RAM, and if you see, even in the App Store, a lot of more intensive type programs, they will recommend for you that you need to, before you run the program or after you've first installed it, you need to do a reboot. Obviously, there's a couple of minutes of wasted time there that the 3GS gets around now, and as I mentioned before, that extra capacity, you can store a year's worth of learning on there now.